Thank you. Good afternoon, friends and family. I'm your cruise host, Jason, and welcome back, whether you're here in the live studio audience or watching. Well, you're not watching back in your room because you're home. If you're seeing this, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And today, broken record, another Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, another absolute legend, another absolute hero of rock throughout the ages, Mr. Don Felder. Let's hear it. First and most importantly, welcome back. So glad to have you.
It's fantastic to be back. I have had nothing but a fabulous time every time I've been on this boat. I think this is my third.
Yeah, it's your third one.
Third cruise here, and every time I can't wait to sign a contract to come back and do it again. The food, the people, the crowds, the service, the production, everything on this cruise is fantastic.
Alan would like you to sign the contract now, if you'd be so kind. Alan would. Yeah, you said it too close to the producer.
We just add another 50 grand to that.
Yeah, done. Is this when we raise the prices on the guests to make that happen? Perfect, yeah. What do you think people get here for free? How do you think these artists get here? You pay for it. You are the reason we have these artists. Well, it's an honor to have you back. We love having you, and the reception we get in the shows shows you how important you are, not only to the cruise, but to the folks in the room and the folks on the cruise. You know, it means the world, and you can see it, you can feel it. Really great. So I always allow the audience to ask questions, but through cards, if you remember from the last time we were here, because they can get out of hand if we give them microphones. And I heard a rumor that we might have some ringers in the crowd. Just a rumor, but I'm sure we'll get to that in a minute. Before we jump to the audience questions, would you be so kind? Let's go all the way back. You mentioned on stage you grew up. Now, were you referencing that you grew up poor or just rural?
I grew up right next to destitute poverty on a dirt road in the deep south in a white clapboard house with a tin roof that my dad and my two granddads built with their own hands.
Amazing.
Hand saws and hammers and nails, not skill saws and nail gun. And our summer jobs down in Florida was like scraping the blistering paint off that house, repainting it or patching leaks in the roof. And so I kind of learned secondhand carpentry, which came in later when I had to build a room for my first newborn son down in a basement of this rental house. So yeah, it was a very humble, yet, you know, when you're that poor and you don't have anything, you can do anything you want.
You don't recognize it.
You don't. You're not going to lose. You have nothing to lose, so you can go try to reach for the stars. And that's exactly what I did. And,
yeah, that's amazing. It's. I grew up in a similar fashion. I grew up way off the record. No electricity, no running water until I was 13. The whole 9 yards, and it's true. And it does. It humbles you in a way. It grounds you in a way. Did that help you as you started to become bigger and bigger and bigger in terms of recognition?
Well, I admire people that never forget their roots, how they got from point A to point B. Now, when I wrote my book, which is a very cathartic experience, I couldn't figure out how I got from that dirt road in the deep south to living in Beverly Hills and all the trappings and gifts and blessings I'd had. So I went back and started meditating every morning that I got up at like 5:36 in the morning for about a half hour and trying to recall those experiences in my life, and I would write them down. And pretty soon I had stacks of legal pads with my scribblings on it, and my fiance at the time started reading them and going, you know, this would make a great book. I said, I failed 9th grade English. I don't know how to write a book. She said, no, this is great. You can have an editor go through and help you, clean this up and stuff and spell things properly. And we did, and wound up turning out to be a New York Times bestseller, which was another surprise blessing. There's one over there.
Yeah, there's one. Anyone looking for that, it's Heaven and Hell, My Life in the Eagles. Is that correct? That's right, yeah. If you're looking for that, you can check it out. I see a couple of them floating around. So you're brought up with not a lot of money, kind of off the beaten path. At what age did you get your first guitar?
Well, I had been watching the Ed Sullivan Show, and I saw Elvis Presley on there shaking and grinding and his lip up, and the girls screaming, and I went, I might like to do that. That looks like it could be fun. So my favorite uncle from North Carolina We used to drive up and visit him during the summer. There's the North Carolina. Yeah. Norwood, North Carolina is where he lives. Yeah. And he snuck a big box of cherry bombs into the trunk of my dad's car. And when my brother and I got home, we said, "Let us help you unpack." And went around and got that box of cherry bombs out.
Smuggle it out the other side.
In the wash shed, in the back. So anyway, one summer, we were out and it was raining, and we used to live on this dirt road, and it was crowned, and there were ditches on both sides of the road. The way you got from the road onto your property is they'd put these big metal culverts underneath the drain and then cover it with dirt so you could drive over it. So when it was raining, there would be water running down this pipe. And my brother and I would take one of those cherry bombs and run out and light it and throw it upstream and run back in the house and let it drift down into that culvert. And then boom, blow up, and everybody would come out, "What the heck is that?" And this kid came out across the street and realized he had seen us blowing up these cherry bombs, and he wanted one. And I said, "Well, I saw this guitar in the top of your closet, and I'll trade you a handful of these cherry bombs for that guitar." He ran home and got it. Brought it over to me. I gave him the cherry bombs. About 10 minutes later, all the cherry bombs were gone, but I had a guitar.
Yeah. I love that story. I think that's a great story. And how long did it take you to become proficient at guitar? Obviously, you're one of the world's greatest now, but at the time, how long did it take you to become adequate?
Well, there was no music store in Gainesville. It was missing a couple of strings, and I used to mow lawns and wash people's cars to get a quarter or 50 cents. And I went down to the drugstore that used to sell guitar strings, each string, or if you had enough money, you could buy a whole pack.
Those are for rich folks. That's rich folks. Yeah.
I went down and bought the missing strings and found this guy around the corner that showed me how to put it on. And I'm 10 years old, and taught me how to play Red River Valley. I don't know if anybody knows that song. A really simple, easy country song. And I used to sit on the front porch on a metal glider of my mom's house with that after school and sit there and just play and play and play until my hands were just bloody. I just loved doing it. There was no iPhone, there was no internet, there was no...
You couldn't just YouTube it.
Nothing. There was nothing else. So then I started learning by ear. My dad, who wanted to be an electrical engineer, went to swap meets, and he bought this tape recorder, a reel-to-reel tape recorder, and he bought a used turntable, and we would borrow records, record them on tape, so I could record at 7.5 inches per second, and then play it back at 3 3/4, and it would play back half speed. It would be an octave down, but I could hear the notes that the guy was playing, whether it was Chet Atkins or B.B. King or whoever it was. And I would sit there and learn how to play guitar until I could speed it up to the right speed, and I'd practiced enough where I could play along with these records. So that's really how I learned. And it's funny because I got a call from the head of Gibson Guitars about 5 years ago. And he says, "You got to hear this guy play Hotel California." I went, "Oh, no, not another one." Everybody wants to play Hotel California. He says, "No, you got to listen to this." And they were having a NAMM show in Dallas. So he puts this guy on, and the guy is just ripping the whole solo on the end just perfectly. And I said, "Who is that guy?" He says, "He's 8 years old."
That's the world today, isn't it?
I didn't even have a guitar when I was 8, so I said, "You put him on the phone." So I get this kid on the phone. I said, "How in the world did you learn to do that?" He said, "I watched you on YouTube over and over, bar by bar."
He learned like you did.
He could figure out exactly how to do it. Watching me on YouTube, I was just astounded that anybody could learn that way.
That's full circle and beautiful, because he learned from you exactly how you learned from B.B. King and Chet Atkins. Just slightly different, but the same concept. That's very cool. Well, as you know, and as I mentioned, I do like to open it up to audience questions as we go, and I'll slip some of these in as we move along. You should appreciate this one. Jared and Brett, who are part of Rockstar Dietitians LLC, how do you keep a slim figure? What do you eat to stay fit?
Well, Jared's my bass player, and Jared's my drummer, and Brett's my bass player, so they should know that I get up every morning, including today, go down to a gym, whether it's in a hotel or at home or wherever I am, and work out for about an hour and a half on treadmill, weightlifting, not to build big giant muscles, but just to burn off calories. That way I can have a little slice of pie or something at dessert and just burn it off. And I watch very carefully what we eat. I have an app that I post everything on that I eat during the day, and by the end of the day I can see how much fat I've eaten, how many carbohydrates I've eaten, how much protein I've eaten. And I owe all of that motivation to my girlfriend, who was an aerialist out of Vegas, and actually she worked on some cruise ships out here as well. And so she got me going down, I guess about 6-7 weeks ago. We started every day, 5 days a week. We go down to work for an hour and a half. And it weren't for her. My daughter says, I can't believe you've got my dad to work out like that. Nobody's ever got him to work out that fast. So I do owe it to my girlfriend, Jaden. Thank you, Jaden.
Nicely done. So we'll bounce back and forth with history and with current questions. Let's jump to the Continentals. Is that correct? Is that the name of that first group?
Yeah, I guess my first band was, it was strange because in Gainesville, at Gainesville High, there were 4 people, actually 5 people, that went to that high school at the same time, that went on to be platinum-selling Rock and Roll Hall of Fame artists. Tom Petty, he was a year behind me. I used to teach him guitar. Myself, I was there. Stephen Stills was a year or 2 ahead of me, and then and Stephen and I had a band when we were 14, and it was called the Continentals, right? And we played little parties for women's club, finger sandwich meetings and stuff like that.
What a story that would be later if you were part of those women's clubs. Like, you remember those 2 boys that used to play for us?
My mom would drive us, because we didn't have a driver's license at 14 and 15, drive us to these little things. We just played and sang and had fun doing it. And then Stephen graduated, and he moved back to California. And the next time I heard from him, it was on the radio, and I was laying in bed, and I heard this voice. I got, that sure sounds like Stephen. It turned out to be Buffalo Springfield.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was the Continentals, and then after he left, Bernie Ledden showed up in Gainesville. His father was hired by the University of Florida to start the Nuclear Physicist Research Department at the University of Florida. And so Bernie called the music store. We had a music store by that time. He called the music store and asked the guy, who's the best guitar player here in Gainesville? He said, oh, Don Felder. How do I get in touch with him? Well, here's his phone number. So he called my mom, and I was up in Lake City, ridden the Greyhound up there myself, and I was playing for a little women's meeting, a little women's group, right? And so I take the bus back, and I start to get off the bus, and this guy comes up and he says, are you Don Felder? I went, yeah. I'm here to pick you up and give you a ride home. I said, I don't know you. He said,
Stranger danger.
I called the music store and got your mom to tell me what bus you were on, and I came to meet you. And I went, okay, so I get in the car, we go home. He comes back into my bedroom. He's got a flat-top guitar, and he is just smoking. He is playing all sorts of country bluegrass stuff, and I didn't even own an acoustic guitar. I had electric guitars, you know. So we decided that he could buy an electric guitar, and I'd buy an acoustic guitar, and we'd have 2 bands. And he would join the Continentals, replacing Stephen. His name was Bernie Ledden, by the way, and he later was one of the founding members of the Eagles. And so we had that band, then we had a bluegrass band that I played flat-top guitar, Bernie played banjo, and one of the pilots for the Florida Fish and Game Commission played mandolin. And we had this trio, we'd go out and play bluegrass music, so I got a full bluegrass education. Bernie got a full rock and roll education out of those 2 bands.
That's amazing. All right, we'll slip back into an audience. Oh, here's a great one. Al and Nancy are from Florida. Are there any female singer-songwriters that really have or still do impress you? Any of the lady singer-songwriters?
From Florida?
In general. No, they're from Florida. Doesn't have to be specific.
You know, I think Alicia Keys, to me, is one of the most talented current living people going. And I admire people that write, sing, and play their own music. The first time I saw her, I'd gone to some really Beverly Hills blubbity blub fundraiser for some politician, and there's probably a couple of hundred people in there with their champagne glasses, and they always have these giant grand pianos that nobody plays in the living room of these houses, right? So
But it looks good.
yeah, yeah. We're standing there talking, and I hear this just unbelievable piano, and this woman singing, and I turn around, and it was Clive Davis. I don't know if you know who Clive Davis is.
I don't know if you're familiar.
And Alicia was at the piano just ripping it up and singing, and she stopped the whole thing. Everybody turned around and stood there and listened to her play for about 15, 20 minutes. And I knew right then and there that talent was like Aretha Franklin. She could write, sing, and play and turn people's heads like that. And so I admire her from coming from nothing again.
Yeah.
But having the skills and talent to write, sing, and play. If you have those three talents, to me, you really got the triple threat, you know. So anyway, I love it.
No, it's a great answer. Kathy comes to us from Boston, and she asks, this is a good one. She's asked us a couple times, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Well, first thing I'd say is don't drink and do as much drugs as you did. Although I think I got through okay with a lot of brain cells still left. So far. Anyway, I haven't been able to do a full assessment, and I'll let you know later as years go by. Anyway, just to stay as clean as you can. And the people that I know in music business, whether they were involved with drugs or not, the people that had the real talent managed to just keep going through all that. And we all got through the 70s. Obviously, you guys were there in the 70s too, and still enjoy alcohol or whatnot. I stopped everything in 1980. When the band split up for 14 years, I stopped drinking, smoking, and doing all the naughty stuff I was supposed to do. Because the first time I came home with a little bit of a hangover buzz, my little 2-year-old came down the hallway with those little plastic onesies.
Little slippy feet, yeah.
Yeah, slipping down the hallway. I went, oh no, these two lifestyles don't work together. This just doesn't work. So I just cleaned up right then. I haven't really done anything since then. Except my doctor gives me really good drugs now.
Yeah, it's different drugs, but still good drugs. Is it true that you learned slide guitar from Dwayne Allman?
Yeah, it was phenomenal.
How cool is that?
So many people came out of that north central Florida area between Petty, Bernie Ledden with the Eagles, me, Stephen Stills. Over in Daytona Beach was the Allman Brothers. Their mother had a beach house there, and during the summer they lived there, and we all fought for the gigs up and down Daytona Beach, playing for the pier or playing in a dance club or playing in a bar or whatever it was to just keep making money. And so we became friends, Bertie and I became friends with Greg and Dwayne. And after we had finished, we'd meet up and go get something to eat at a deli at 1 o'clock in the morning. And then we'd go over to Dwayne's house, and I'd sleep on the couch, and Bertie would crash on the floor. And I walked in one day, and Dwayne was sitting on the floor, and he was playing slide guitar. And I had never seen anybody play slide guitar like he had. The only slide experience I had seen was a lot of the old blues players that would play, very simple slide guitar. So I sat down on the floor. I said, "You got to show me how to do that. How do you do that? How do you tune it?" So he started explaining to me what the tuning was like, and showing me pulls, and just once he gave me the basics for it, I never tried to be Dwayne. He was astronomically more talented than anybody on slide guitar that I ever saw. And so I admired his skills and talent, but he gave me the foundation. And from there, the one thing that got me into the Eagles was playing slide guitar on a session for Good Day in Hell. And I thank Dwayne for showing me how to play slide so I could do that session, so I could wind up here today in front of you guys.
There it is. Great name here. Biff. Biff comes to us all the way from Buffalo. Sad Cafe, was the solo done in one take? I heard a rumor that it was.
Yeah, the acoustic solo in the middle of that actually has, I think I played 4 acoustic guitars on it that play a harmony. It was like a little quartet that plays on acoustic guitar. So the first time I played the solo, it was just one instrument. I went, this needs to have harmony on it. So I stacked, I think, 3 other guitars playing harmony on it as well. But the original solo, the one thing I learned starving on the streets in New York trying to play jazz was how to improvise. So you can sit down, listen to a chord progression, and then just play. You know, you can play along with it, you can improvise. So when we got to that part of Sad Cafe, I just grabbed an acoustic guitar and said, okay, push record, let's see what it comes out with, you know. And so that first little solo came out, and we took that and put some harmony on it. And yeah, I would say the first pass at, usually my first or second passes are keepers anyway, so.
Love it. That's that testament, obviously. Okay, so from the Continentals, we go into the Monty Quartet, is that correct? And then Quintet, excuse me, and then Flo from there, and then the Eagles, is that around 74? You're around 73, 74, correct? You get the call. Tell us a little bit about how you transitioned from being a local guy and or a smaller band player to getting the call for the Eagles.
Well, Bernie was, like I said, a founding member there, and we stayed in contact. And when he moved back to California, he kept calling me, going, "You got to move to California. It's not in New York City. It's not in." I was in Boston. I moved from New York City to Boston. I was working in a recording studio there 6 days a week, learning how to make records. I realized if you're going to make it in this business, you got to know how to make records. Got to write, arrange, produce, record,
all of it,
edit, everything. You got to know how to do it all. So I took this job in the studio in Boston for 6 days a week for $50 a week. But I didn't care about the money. I wanted to learn
the education.
Records. So Bernie kept saying, "Oh, we're going to be playing in Boston. Come down and see my band, the Eagles." And so I'd go backstage and hang out and play guitar, play slide backstage with them. And when I finally moved to California, I would go over to their rehearsals and just hang around, you know, and play. Bonnie Raitt would be rehearsing in one room, and the Eagles would be in another. And so I'd go hang out with them for a while, and then go check out Bonnie, and we'd sit and play slide together, just goof around, you know. So when they got to that song called Good Day in Hell, they wanted to have a slide guitar on it. So Bill Simzik called me and asked me if I'd come down. And I walked in, I had my guitar and my own little amp, and I told him what mic I needed because that's the way I get my sound. He looked at me like, "You telling me how to make a record?" I said, "Well, I just know what makes my sound." And so he said, "Okay, we'll try it." Sure enough, it was, you know, what they were looking for. I think we played about 3 takes on that, and that was it. I went home that night. I got a call the next morning, and Glenn had called me and said, "Would you join our band?" Now, I had been in touch with Bernie the whole time the band had started, from 71 to 73, and had heard about the turmoil and the feuds and all that power struggle over who was going to sing what and all that stuff. And I was actually playing with Crosby Nash at the time, ironically enough, replacing Stephen.
You were
Stephen
playing
had
Stephen's
left to
part.
go do Manassas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was playing with Crosby Nash, and I was making $1,500 a week. And I had a pregnant wife in 1973, I think, was when that was going on. I got that call about it, and I went, "Yeah, I'd love to do it." And then I hung up and went, "I got to go talk to Graham. I don't know if this is a smart thing to join a band that's always breaking up, or to stay with where I am and take care of my baby and my wife." So I went and had a meeting with Graham, who's one of my just most admirable souls that I've ever dealt with. We've shared paths in life since I saw him play when I was 14. He played at the University of Florida and sang in the Hollies. And so, anyway, he said, "Don, you don't want to be a sideman for the rest of your life. You should go join that band." So I went, "Okay, you know, fingers crossed. I hope this worked out." It worked out quite well.
I would say it did. Yeah, I would say it did. Yeah, you can applaud that. It's all right. John comes to us from Tampa. Over the years, how have you balanced fame with everyday life?
I live everyday life just as a normal person. I think celebrity is bullshit, except for the Celebrity Cruise. I think. No,
yes, we do like Celebrity Cruise.
You know, I live in Hollywood. I see famous movie stars and musicians and stuff. I live in Beverly Hills, but they're all over everywhere. And you can really tell the ones that are sincere people and the ones that their success has gone to their head. And I just realized, you know, that dirt road where I grew up taught me, don't forget you got the dirt under your fingernails.
Yeah.
You know, you're still, that's who you are. So.
Do you still have that very first guitar?
I wish I did. No, it was such a piece of crap.
Yeah.
I bought a real good one.
Robert Cameron asks a question that kind of plays into your second to last answer there. Robert Cameron from Lubbock, Texas. How did two world-class guitarists like you and Joe Walsh determine who would play which parts and how those parts would sound? Specifically on the song Try and Love Again, but in general.
It was funny because Joe and I had gotten together and played together before he joined the Eagles. And we did a couple of TV shows. We actually opened for Elton John at Dodger Stadium with Joe Walsh and friends. We just loved playing each other. We had a very symbiotic relationship musically in that we knew how to step back and let somebody else step forward. And they would step back and we'd just trade off like that. And when somebody was playing high, the other person would support them and play lower parts and slower parts. And then as one went up, the other one went down, and we just did this lovely dance together. I've never worked with anybody that was so intuitive about that. And Joe and I just locked together and figured it out. And I think the one thing would be the two solos on Hotel. I made a demo of Hotel California when I first got the original progression on a Roland Ace rhythm machine. Me playing bass, me playing 12-string, with, like I said, a drum machine, playing like this cha-cha beat, and me playing the reggae parts, and I just kept overdubbing, and then I said this would be perfect for Joe and I to trade solos on. So when I got to the end of the demo, I picked up a Les Paul and I kind of played something that I thought would be what I would play, just made it up. And then I picked up something, well, Joe would play something kind of like this. And so I kind of mapped out what was going to take place there. We got in the studio to record the final guitar parts on Hotel California. And Joe and I were just going to sit up in the studio with our amps out there and roll tape and go for it, do what we had always done with that just intertwining of each other.
The dance.
And Henley came walking in and went, "What are you doing?" We're working out the guitar part for the end. No, you got to do it just like the demo. He had been listening to my demo for a year. I said, I don't know what that was. I just made that up. I have no idea what I played on that demo. So I had to call my housekeeper back in Malibu, have her go through my cassettes, take a cassette,
Find the right one.
put it in a blaster, play it and hold the phone up so we could record it in the studio in Miami, and I could sit down and learn what I just, made up as a demo. And so I would say probably about 50 or 60% of those two solos came out of that original demo. And Walsh took his own place, and
Sure.
he took some of that, and then he did Joe, which
Sure.
was great. So it was wonderful. It was an interesting experience. It was like I don't know what that was. I just made that up. It's just,
Well, as a guitar player, and please correct me if I'm way off base, you've stated before that, and I think on the last interview you and I did, that sonically you take a lot and are influenced by horn players. Is that correct?
yeah, I think a horn player can only play so many notes, and I saw horn players in New York City that could say more in 3 notes than Steve Vai could do in 3,000 notes. So it's not the number of notes, it's how melodically you can play. And I don't know if it was Ben Franklin or one of those guys said, if you want to teach somebody something to remember, set it to a simple melody. Now, if you think about kids at 1.5 or 2 years old, they can learn the ABCs with that little A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Before they even know what an A or a B looks like, they can learn the whole alphabet from that song. So if you want to speak to somebody in a simple enough but yet cool enough melodic way, when you play, they'll be able to remember it. And I think that's part of the recognizable sounds that are on the Eagles record. There's no shredding. It's not like, I'm going to really play all these notes. It's
melodic. That's a great word for it.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's beautiful. Question from Rosa from Colorado Springs. There are so many great songs done by you and the Eagles. Which song has a special meaning for you, and or do you have a favorite to play?
Well, I have to say, the most challenging song that I have to play every time is Hotel. Not only is there 6 verses of lyrics that I can't, in the middle of the 3rd verse, sing the last verse instead. People go, that's not right. You just sing out the lyrics.
I know this song.
And you can't get to the end of the solos and just start jamming. You have to play it just like it is on the record. And you need to play it at a level of presentation that the song of that stature really deserves. So I concentrate on that. I practice it every day, whether if I'm off the road for 2 weeks, I try to play it as much as I can. So the touch and feel of playing those really complicated parts on the end of that song can't fall short, in my opinion. If they do, I stop playing. I said, I'm done. You know.
That's kind of fascinating, though, that you, yeah, please. I think I heard some murmurs out there. You probably caught what I caught, that is one of your most famous songs out there, but you still practice that specific song every day. We would instantly think, me as, just the average fan would think, that's got to be locked in by now. There's no way you have to rehearse that anymore.
I compare it to like playing golf. I don't know if there are any golfers out here.
I'm sure there's a few.
The first thing that goes away is your short game. Feel on putting, sand traps, inside the 150-yard shots that stop and spin on the green. And the further away you get from that delicate control, the worse your game gets, your score goes up. And it's sort of the same thing with music. The further away you get from that intimate touch of every note being right where it's supposed to be, time-wise and tuning-wise, I just can't go out to you guys and play something that's not up to where I believe it needs to be for you.
That's fantastic. It's very interesting because when we have, like yourself, like Hotel California, and I don't mean to focus on that song, but it's such a recognizable song. Whenever an artist comes on, and this doesn't happen very often, but occasionally they will adapt their song or change it a little bit to make it fresher or newer or updated. And we find that 99 out of 100 times, it irritates people. It just irritates people. Even if it's you playing it, even if it's you, they're like, that's not the way I remember it on the record. And we get complaints right off the bat. And so that's beautiful that you're still focused and dedicated on to the way it should be done.
That's right.
It's an art piece.
Well, they've been living with that song 45 years.
Yeah.
The radio and the elevator, wherever it is, you know that song really well. And if somebody comes out and makes a mistake, you hear it right away. And I can't do that. You guys lived and paid money to come see me play, and I'm going to give you the absolute best job.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Love it. Mary Klein from Pennsylvania. Oh, this is a fun question. Are you ever nervous, like butterflies, before an appearance? Does that still happen to you? And do you remember your very first big gig?
The only time I've really been terrified, and I mean hand-shaking, palm sweating, terrified, was I was asked to perform at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The first place I went when I moved to New York City when I was 18 was I had heard so much about the Met that I had to go see it. The first day I was there, I went to the Met and spent all day going through that place. They had no culture in Gainesville. They had no paintings and sculpture, and so I was like, I gotta see what this is all about. So I got asked to perform there at a function called Play It Loud. And it was all the really world-famous, recognizable guitars that artists had played. There was the guitar from Jimi Hendrix from Woodstock, and there was Elvis Presley's guitar, and the Everly Brothers guitar, and just on and on and on and on and on. And so I had the honor of having my guitar on exhibit there. Then they asked me to play live the day of the opening in front of about 250 news people with video cameras and still cameras and all these people. That didn't bother me at all. But I had to walk out on the stage smaller than this by myself, and I had the band playing tracks. So it was going to just be me standing there playing the tracks instead of a live band. And Steve Miller was right in the front row.
As you do.
Yeah. And anybody heard of, let's see, what's the name of the band? The guy plays a red double neck guitar. Anybody know? Led Zeppelin?
Zeppelin, come on. Yeah.
And the guitar player's name was? He's sitting right next to Steve Miller. I mean, as close as we are from each other. And I'm like, God, I can't go out there and mess this thing. If I hit one bad note, I will ride in bed in the middle of the night for the rest of my life. I can't mess this up. So I literally was nervous. That's probably the most nervous I've ever been, was to walk out and play in front of those two. I didn't care about the cameras. That I could do. It was just those two icons sitting right in front of me.
That close, watching your fingers on the strings and the whole
hearing every note.
So you're in the Eagles. The Eagles are exploding in beautifully, and you guys have just done amazing things. Let's fast forward a few years. You make it to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What's the emotion when you're inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Well, you know, when I first started playing music, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame didn't exist. I didn't know what a Grammy was. I didn't know what a gold record. I didn't care about any of that. I just loved music. That's why I started playing it. That's why I, mowed lawns to get strings for the guitars. Why I moved to New York when I was 18 and starved up there learning how to improvise, and moved to Boston to learn how to make records for $50. It was never about the fame or the accolades or any of that stuff. So I don't want to, in any way diminish being a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's a real honor. But at the same time, to me, this whole thing is not about the silver and gold and platinum records on the wall. As a matter of fact, I took all that stuff down out of my house and put it away, because at the end of the 1999, we were awarded the Eagles by the RIAA, which is Recording Institute Association of America. They're the ones that say you've got a gold record or a platinum record.
They're the official call.
Yeah. That we were presented with the biggest selling album of the 20th century. I thought back, the Beatles and Elvis and the Rolling Stones and all the people that had made records in the 20th century, and we had outsold them all. So I put all those other things away, and I have one of them on my mantle in my studio. It's that award.
Very cool.
That's the only one that I really, appreciate that way. So.
Well, so the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was 1998, and then Colby actually asks a follow-up question to that. In 2016 was the Musicians Hall of Fame for you. Does either one mean more than the other, or do they kind of sit the same?
I think it meant a lot to be inducted.
That's from Colby, by the way.
I've been inducted into three Halls of Fame. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Artists Hall of Fame, which has like Ray Charles in it, Jimmy Buffett, and Tom Petty, and just on and on and on, of musicians that came out of Florida, and artists that paint and sing and also. That was meaningful to me. And then the Musicians Hall of Fame for musicians in Nashville, to me that's one of the highest honors, to be in Musicians Hall of Fame. Not the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but just for the musical skills that you've got. And I kept thinking, why are they inducting me into these Hall of Fame? Oh, I know why, because I'm getting old. They got to get me before I go away.
Trying to give you your due before you can't accept it anymore.
That's right.
Susan comes to us from Arizona. The Eagles and Linda Ronstadt worked closely together in the early days. Are you still in touch, and what was that like?
Linda, we used to call her Roundy because she was just such a beautiful, round, gorgeous face. And I think Don and Glenn and J.D. Souther and Jackson Brown were really close to her. I was still kind of in the background when we were working with her, although in 1999 we played New Year's Eve in L.A., and it was the Eagles, Jackson Brown, and Linda Ronstadt on that show. And it was really wonderful to see them all and be back together and see Linda on stage again, still singing great.
Is there, Chris wants to know, did you have a favorite singer that you've worked or performed with, and why? Because you've toured with everybody. You've performed with everybody. You have just a laundry list of monster artists.
There's a couple of amazing singers that have amazing talent. Barry Gibb from the Bee Gees, to me, is a vocal genius, to tell you the truth. I made records with those guys, and he's the only guy I've seen that could go into the studio and sing the exact same part 6 times in unison, and all the vibratos are together. You know, he's not, they're all, and it sounds like one voice. When you hear him sing his falsetto, it sounds kind of thin and puny, but by the time he's done it 5 or 6 times on top of each other, it sounds like a Bee Gees record. So he's got just amazing vocal control. I do have to salute Don Henley, because he has such a unique voice, and he can sing the New York Times phone book, and I'd buy it. You know, I just think he's a great singer.
Good answer. We do have to get Mr. Felder here soon to another engagement, but before we do, Michelle has a great question here. Michelle from Denver, Colorado. This is right down the middle for you. You change guitars almost every song. Do you have a very favorite, and why?
Well, you know, I have a lot of babies that I've recorded with and played with and just love to death. One of the most unique things I have in my collection is that I was staying in London, and a friend of mine who used to be head of Christie's auction house called me up and said, I got to come pick you up and take you over to show you this guitar. And I went, do I really have to go over to see a guitar? Really? No, you need to see this guitar. So he pulls up, and he's got a little baby BMW, and we hop in it, we drive around London, and we go up to Kensington Palace. And I go, why are we at Kensington Palace? He says, well, the guy that made this guitar is in here. And I thought he'd be like, you know, one of the guards or a lawn mowing guy, a gardener or something. So we pull in to Kensington Palace, right at the place where Princess Di lived. But we're on the other side of the street. And I said, what are we doing here? He says, oh, the guy that's got this guitar is in this area of the palace. So we go up, knock on the door, opens the door, and it's David Linley, who's Lord Linley, who's the son of Princess Margaret. And I'm walking into Princess Margaret's house. And I'm just like, I'm from Gainesville. What the heck am I doing here?
I grew up on a dirt road.
In a royal family territory, you know? But David was selling his house and was moving into a new house. His wife was pregnant, and he had a guitar collection. He wanted to get rid of some because he didn't have any room for them. So he invites me into his parlor, which is their living room in the royal palaces.
Well, they're parlors.
Parlors. And he had invented this thing called CAD for wood. Computer-aided design, where he could design something in a computer and it would cut laser accurate into thin pieces of wood, so he could do inlays that were just phenomenal, absolutely smooth. Even if it was on a curve, it was just fantastic. And so he brings out this wooden case, and the case itself is a beautiful piece of art. I thought, do you have a case for this case? You need to protect this thing, a bag or something, you know? He says no, but he opens it up, and there were 2 of them identical. He opens up one, and it's like a little small version of an acoustic guitar, and it's got steel strings on it, beautiful inlays on it, and ivory, and all sorts of gorgeous stuff. And it's like a little brash young boy. It's like bright and snappy and stuff. He says, that's the little boy. Opens up the other one, and it's a very similar looking guitar, except it's got nylon strings on it, and it's warm and tender, and that's the little girl. He said, I can't separate these 2, so you have to take both of them.
Oh, wow.
So he gives me these 2 guitars.
Oh, wow.
And he ships them to my house, and I have them in my parlor, which is called a family room. They're my parlor guitars anyway, so those have a really special just story with them.
That's fantastic. What a cool story. Now, I know we have to get you to another engagement, but before we do, is there any last words, anything you want to say to the folks here?
Yeah, I'd like to invite my band up here.
Yeah, come on up, guys.
Now, I don't know if you guys saw these guys perform or not.
Come on up.
This is Rob Arthur, keyboard, Jared Coate, Brett Simons, and David Mike. These are some of the greatest musicians I've ever worked with. They're the guys that make me sound good. Anyway, you guys have any questions?
Uh-oh.
Who are the two blondes you were caught with at the diner by your ex-girlfriend's friend?
Wow, that got deep quick.
I don't remember any blondes.
It's in your book.
I don't remember any blondes.
Yeah, band questions are over, apparently. That was... And the Q&A with the band is now concluded. Mr. Felder would like to end that. Anyone else before we wrap this up?
We said our piece.
They said,
I
yeah.
thought they were going to ask me for a raise after they became celebrities.
Obviously, you got to see this fantastic band led by the gentleman down there at the end. So now is a great opportunity for all of us in the room to say thank you. And thank you to Mr. Felder for being a part of this. Thank you, Don. And thank you very much to the Don Felder Band for being with us. Huge round of applause. Don Felder.
Inviting you to join us and many of our good friends on board the 70s Rock and Romance Cruise.
The 70s Rock and Romance Cruise is back in 2024, and it's sure to be one rockin' reunion. You'll see over 50 live performances from the bands that made the 70s so special, including Foreigner performing the hits at sea, Randy Bachman, founder of Bachman Turner Overdrive and the Guess Who, Dave Mason, War, Generation Radio, Ambrosia, Pablo Cruz, Firefall, Orleans, Queen Nation, Hotel California, A Salute to the Eagles, Creedence Revived, and many more to be added soon. Enjoy 7 days under the sun while rocking out with the best in classic rock. Setting sail March 14th on the Celebrity Summit from Miami and making stops in the beautiful southern Caribbean ports of Aruba and Curacao. As always, go behind the scenes with the stars at over 25 celebrity interactive events, including Q&As, panel discussions, and more. Plus, celebrate the culture of the 70s with nightly pool parties that will keep you singing and dancing all night long. Join us in 2024 and relive the era that made you feel so good.